There we
Let's
go.
get ready. Welcome back to the Speaking and Communicating podcast. I am your host, Roberta Ndlela. If you are looking to improve your communication skills, both professionally and personally, this is the podcast you should be tuning into. Communication and soft skills are crucial for your career growth and leadership development. And by the end of this episode, please log on to Apple and Spotify and leave us a rating and a review. Now let's get communicating with Lane Dockstader, joining all the way from Salt Lake City, Utah. Lane has had an illustrious career, but recently he is a specialist and an expert in helping us tell our stories through our LinkedIn profiles. And before I go any further, please help me welcome him to the show. Hi, Lane.
Hi, Roberta. So good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm glad we're going to have this conversation. We've known each other for a while, so this is going to be fun.
Yes, this will be fun. Here we go.
Absolutely. Please introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, so my name is Lane Dockstader with LI Training. And basically, I first got introduced to this platform called LinkedIn, which, of course, as everybody may know, is the oldest social media platform. It has over 1 billion members now. And but it's been around for about 20, just over 20 years. And I remember about 19 years ago, I was looking for a job, and there's this big group of people that are networking that are all looking for jobs. And this leader stood up front and he says, if you're looking for a job, you better be on LinkedIn. And I'm like, what is LinkedIn? And he
Mm.
said, it's a social media platform for job seekers and business people. And so I've been on LinkedIn a long, long time, but about 5 years ago, I really took a deep dive into LinkedIn, and I became a LinkedIn coach. So I teach people how to grow their business, and then also even people that are looking for a job, because ultimately, if you're looking for a job, your business is getting a job. And so it's kind of the same idea.
Right. So 20 years ago, when most of what we call social media today was starting, first of all, we want to find out, did you get a job through LinkedIn as you were advised?
I did. Not only that, one of the things I learned, that this speaker that told us that we should be on LinkedIn, one of the other things he said was that imagine the job market like an iceberg. So you can see, if you're looking at an iceberg. I went to Alaska once. I went on a cruise to Alaska, so I saw some of these icebergs. But above the water, you only see a portion of it. You probably see 20% of the actual iceberg that's sticking up above the water.
Mm.
Most of the iceberg is actually below the water that you don't even ever see. And what a lot of people don't realize is the jobs that you see, the jobs that are posted online, really amount to about 20% of the jobs out there, kind of like that iceberg. Most people don't realize that to find the 80% of jobs, you actually have to network. You actually have to talk to people and find out about the hidden jobs that most people don't even know about.
Hmm. So the hidden jobs on LinkedIn, would that mean an HR executive will find you, or you approach the director of a company of the industry you're in? How exactly does that work?
It can go either way, but really, you don't want to, if you're looking for a job, you don't want to leave the control of your destiny in someone else's hands. So it's really all about networking. It's about who do you know. So if there's maybe one or two or three companies that you'd really like to work for, one nice thing about LinkedIn is you can just do a search for that name of that company, people that work for that company, and you can actually start conversations. And then, so let's say that you meet two or three people, maybe you have a phone call or a video call like this. Um, you can actually get to know people that work there, and then as you have these conversations, you might get extra information like who the hiring manager is. And then, so imagine you're searching for a job, you've talked to 3 people at the company, you're learning about what's going on with the company, and then you actually connect with the hiring manager and you start connecting with them and asking questions and build a relationship with them. Now, put yourself in the shoes of that person. Now you're going in for an interview, but you already know the hiring manager. So how much of an advantage is that? And people just don't even realize that. But also, that hiring manager or some of these people that work for the company, once they see the value in what you bring, and once you started building those relationships, then they're likely to share with you, hey, by the way, there's this hidden job that you would qualify for. It sounds like it would be a great fit for you. So we want you to come in and have an interview. So you're really having these connections and doing this networking partly through LinkedIn is a great way to have a leg up on your competition, other people that are looking for jobs also with that company.
Mm. And speaking of having a leg up, let's talk about networking for a second because a lot of us don't do it right. When it
Right.
comes to networking, we usually think if it's physical, oh, here's my business card. Hi, Lane. My name is Roberta. Here's my business card. And you go to the next one and you think, at this conference, I should hand out 100 business cards. Okay, that's one scenario. But then online, the networking aspect, if you can just walk us through some of the challenges, the do's and don'ts of networking, especially because when you're looking for a job, there's a bit of an element of what we term desperation. So you don't want to appear too desperate and too give me the job now, but you want to build relationships. How do you do that right?
Yeah, and so what and I'll tell you what I'll share with you what a lot of people do. A lot of people apply for a job or yeah, there was one person last year that he had been applying for jobs for a year and he never got a job in that whole year. And so obviously there's things that he could be doing differently. And a lot of people share that with me. But what you don't want to do is just to apply to 100 jobs or something and then leave it at that. Um, why not actually, like I was mentioning earlier, have conversations with people that actually work with that company, find out what's going on, be a little more proactive. Don't just let your future and your destiny be in the hands of somebody else, but actually reach out, be proactive, start conversations yourself. Um, because so many people just apply online and then they never follow up. Why not call them? So if I did an application today, why not call that office tomorrow and say, hey, I sent you an application yesterday. I just want to make sure you got it. That way they're starting to put a name to the face, and then you can kind of follow up that way. It's kind of like anything else. Um, you know, your friends, for example. Let's say your friend says hello and you don't talk to them again for another year. Well, what kind of a friend is that? What kind of a friend am I if I don't talk to my friend for another year, right? And so it's all about relationships and following up. And you can do that effectively. Some people are feel like, oh, I don't want to come across as pushy or rude or something like that. But at the
Yeah.
same time, if you're not on their mind, just like a friend, they're probably going to forget all about you for a while, right? And so part of it is the follow up too.
Mm. The relationship building aspect, very key. One, as you said, because you want to be on their minds, but also, as you were mentioning earlier, when it comes to the interview, you know how sometimes it becomes your turn to ask the interview panel questions. Most of us fall into the trap of how much does the position pay? When you have built a relationship with the hiring manager on LinkedIn, you can literally have really good questions to ask about the company. And I think that could make you stand out, if you agree, m- versus any other candidate who'd be like, how much does it pay? How much does it pay?
Exactly. And I'm sure we've all been guilty of this. I know I have in the past,
Mm.
where I'm sitting in the middle of that interview and they say, "What questions do you have?" And all of a sudden I'm trying to come up with, 2 or 3 or 4 questions just off the top of my mind, but those times that I've actually been prepared and I've had 3 to 5 questions, written down or already prepared ahead of time, it goes so much smoother because now I'm not kind of stammering my way through it. I'm prepared and I just go to the next question. And so yeah, it definitely makes a difference. Like you say, when you're already have that relationship with that person started, you definitely have an advantage. Plus, now you know a little bit more, and especially if you've talked to three or more people at that company, and now that fourth person you're talking to is the hiring manager. If you've already asked them, what's going on with the company? What pain points do you have? Why are you hiring for this position? Then you have that extra information, and now you can fill in with that, and then ask great follow up questions to help
Mm,
you stand out.
that's right. Great follow-up questions. And also, you are able to, let's say you don't get that job in that particular company you were targeting, just that experience alone has made you better in some way that the next company that you're targeting, you would have had the experience, you've received feedback, you know what's being expected, all of those scenarios will help you in the next phase to do better and just keep doing better until you reach whatever goal you had in mind.
Exactly. And one of the things that I think a lot of people miss out on and missed opportunity is at the end of that interview, as you're walking out, um, why not grab a card and write a little note to that person, to that hiring manager, and saying, "Hey, thank you for interviewing with me today. I love, this and that, and I appreciate you," and things like that. Just write a little note because that really makes you stand out. Because most people either they don't do that or they forget to do that, and that simple little things like that can make a big difference that people just don't even think about.
I'll be honest, I didn't even know that. I've never done it myself. I'm just as guilty.
But don't you
Hmm.
appreciate, Roberta, don't you appreciate, I mean, in this day of emails and text messages, don't you appreciate when someone sends you a card, right?
I can tell you, Len, you know what? That is so true. I've had guests who have been on my show. They would reach out and say, I love your show. Can I be a guest? The first time I received a not only a card, but the book, which is on sale at Amazon for a really good price. Obviously, she sent it to me for free as a thank you, and a handwritten note. When last did you see somebody's handwriting, Lane? I thought,
Right?
wow, do people still write with their hands? And this is a really busy person. And she actually took the time to write it by hand. I was really pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. We remember, like right now, over on my desk, I have 2 cards that people sent me, like handwritten cards, and I keep those, and a lot of times people do, and so they'll see that again every once in a while. They'll see that card again, and then they'll remember you. So that can make a big difference.
Mm. And that's one of the soft skills, as we say. So let's go back to, we've talked about the networking aspect on LinkedIn. Now let's talk about the actual profile because it's online. People will judge based on what they see and what they read. First of all, basics. Let's start with your profile picture. What would be some of the guidelines to have a good professional profile picture on LinkedIn?
Well, and let me use an example of why this is important too, just to kind of set a foundation here.
Mm,
So let's put ourselves in the shoes. If you put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter, so you're working at a company, and let's say you have a stack of 100 resumes, right?
mhm.
And so you're starting to weed through those, and you have to have some type of a system to go through those resumes. What most people don't realize is that person, you're if you had a hundred stack of 100 resumes, pretty quickly you're going to be able to look at each one of those resumes, and probably in about 6 to 7 seconds you'll be able to decide, okay, is this in the not interested pile, we're not going to hire this person, Or is this in the interested pile where I, as a recruiter, I'm going to continue to look at this group of people, right? And you're going to be able to do that in about 7 seconds. And whether we think about it or not, we do the same thing. If we're watching a YouTube video, within about 7 seconds, we're going to decide, do we want to do something else, watch a different video, or do we want to continue watching this? And
Mm,
so, with that in mind, as you're looking at someone's profile, whether we think about it consciously or not, in about 5 to 7 seconds, we decide, is this someone that I want to continue to learn more about? Or am I going to click on that next button and go to the next person? So, with that in mind, there's three things, and you touched on the very first one. There's three things that people typically look at first when they look at a profile. They look at your personal picture, they look at your background photo or banner, and then they look at your title. Those are the three things that they see first. And like you mentioned, the very first thing that they're usually going to look at is your picture. And
mhm,
so, to answer your question, I always recommend having a professional photo done. Now, every once in a while, I talk to someone that's looking for a job, and maybe they're on a tight budget. And so, when I say professional, a professional photo could be, um, pretty much anybody with one of these phones these days uh, can take a good picture. So if you don't feel like you have the budget to hire a professional, you probably have someone in your family. A lot of kids. I used to when I was in high school, I was a yearbook photographer, and so you probably have
mm,
someone, kid, neighbor, someone in your family, a friend. You probably have somebody that's pretty good at taking pictures, and they could just use that camera to take a picture. So the first thing I recommend is just having a good quality picture. Now, sometimes when I think of this, I think of Bigfoot
yeah,
because a lot of times when you see a picture of Bigfoot, you kind of see this. It's kind of grainy. It's kind of off in the distance. You see these trees, and it looks like there's some camouflaged, like big gorilla or something walking around. And so if you imagine Bigfoot, if it was a LinkedIn picture, what I recommend is having a picture like this, like zoomed in, so you can see your face, you can see the whites of your eyes, so to speak. But having something zoomed in that you can actually see your face, because people connect better if they see your face like that. And
mhm,
so kind of the just some of the guidelines is I would have a good, hire a professional, or at least have a good quality picture made, and then make sure it's zoomed in close up. And then one of the things I do is once someone has that picture, if they want to do certain things with it, like I can edit that picture. Then once they have a good picture, I can edit it to change the background or do different things so that it really looks quality on LinkedIn. But I do recommend starting with a professional or a good quality picture to start.
absolutely, because that's the first thing people look at, as you say. And then when it comes to the background, the banner, if you don't have a business or a book, authors and speakers will have all their logos and everything behind their pictures. If you're just a student, you graduated, you don't, what would you recommend would be a good banner for you? Because there are some LinkedIn image suggestions on Google. What would you pick if you don't have any of those assets yet?
Yeah, and so, I mean, there's a couple things that come to mind. If you have, maybe you have family, maybe you have a hobby, maybe you have, something that you enjoy doing, you could put those kind of photos on there. The other thing that comes to mind is a lot of times I've heard that for people who are moving up in a company, I've heard it said that you always want to dress to success of the next level. And so if you want to be your manager, then dress like that manager would dress. Always dress to the next level. And
Mhm,
so what you may want to do is just even though you may not have a business, you could imagine you have a business. So for example, let's say that you've just graduated, you've learned how to maybe you have a degree in computers and your goal is that you want to create websites. And so you could imagine that you have a website production business, and you could dress up your LinkedIn as if you did. And so that's another idea. The other thing I do is a lot of times I'll use ChatGPT. ChatGPT comes up with great ideas sometimes, and I'll ask it, for a website developer, what are 5 ideas for a picture that they can use for their background on LinkedIn? And so sometimes I generate some good ideas that way too.
ChatGPT certainly does come in handy. And then, Lane, let's talk about the part below your picture where you have the titles. Is it better to have, some people have 4 or 5 titles: keynote speaker, author, trainer, CEO, this, that? Or, how we've crafted these one liners for coaching businesses, and you go, I help professionals and entrepreneur with their public speaking skills. Should I go for the titles or go for the one liner or a combination of the two? What would you recommend?
I kind of like the combination of the two. Now, most people, in marketing, one thing that I've learned is that you really don't want to give people more than 3 choices.
Mm,
If you give most people more than 3 choices, we start to get confused. And so typically, as a rule, I usually wouldn't recommend doing more than 3 different titles. You can definitely do 1 or 2 or 3, but I probably wouldn't do more than that. But definitely, I would put in some power words of some sort. Just as an example, so this is an example. Imagine, if you will, this would be an example of a really bad LinkedIn profile, especially if you're looking for a job.
mm,
So every once in a while, I see a LinkedIn profile. It looks like they've started to do something. They've at least put their name in there, and they threw a couple things in there, but they don't have a picture. So I can't really connect with you if I can't see your picture. If I don't see your face, I can't really connect with you as well.
right.
They have this bluish green, kind of a teal background. It's just the default that you can choose really quick. If you don't know what else to put, you can just choose that background. And then maybe they put on there that they're a manager, right?
Mm,
And so that's kind of a bad example of what not to do. And so let's say for a title, you're a manager. What you don't want to do is just say manager. That's really boring. If there's 10 people that say manager and one person that doesn't, the 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 heads up, the nod will probably go to the person that's being a little bit different, with everything else being equal. And so if I was a manager, I would put something. I would prefer to, instead of just saying manager, I would prefer to say, uh, you know, uh, top manager in the company that increased results by year over year by 10%, or something like that. Some kind of power words, and a number of some sort really stands out. So I would do something like that rather than just put the vanilla, manager on there.
It's interesting you say that. Usually, when we use that example of I've made this difference in the company, that's the so you're going to have the about section, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you know how you have the resumes of I've worked for General Motors from this year to that year, and then I worked for, NBC from this year to that year. And then we always encourage people to, instead of saying, did this, did that, like you said, quantify what you did, the difference that you make. So you're saying that I must have that just below the photograph?
So I would do that. I would, just below your photo, there's a chance for you to put your title. And so I would really put something on there that makes you stand out, makes you different, tells who you are. And then, especially if you're applying for a job, I would change that every once in a while. I would actually change your profile in the title. So let's say that this week I'm applying for one company. I would change the title to the keywords in their job description. And then let's say
Mm,
next week I applied to a different job, then you can always change it as you go. And so it's not anything that's set in stone. I think too many times, maybe 8 years ago, someone applied for a job, and so they leave their LinkedIn the same as it is today. Or maybe they start a new business, so they change their LinkedIn or they set it up, but they usually just set it up to set it up. It's a good idea, I would say at least 2 or 3 times a year minimum. It's probably a good idea to go in there, look at your LinkedIn, decide, okay, what's my goal right now? If I'm looking for a job, what kind of job do I want? Let me set up my LinkedIn specifically for that. And then I would definitely, change those keywords, week to week as you're applying for different jobs. But also, if you have a business, and so far we've mostly been talking about, applying for a job. But let's say you have a business, think in your mind, who is my perfect client? What kind of clients do I want to attract? Because really, you want to set up your LinkedIn profile so that when that perfect client looks at your profile, they want to learn more. So with your picture, your background picture, your banner, and your title, you basically your goal is to, in that first 7 seconds, to make people think, Roberta, I want to learn more about her. And then
Mhm.
they'll go down and they'll read that about section that we'll talk about here shortly. But as long as you've captured their attention and they want to learn more about you, then you've done your job with that top part of your profile.
Right. Keywords, very key, as you say, because even during the sifting process of the application systems and companies, it's the keywords when they use, like you said earlier, sometimes they'll say, okay, this is the pile we're interested in. This pile is a definite no. Usually the keywords. That's why when you apply, you don't use the exact same resume. You
Right.
usually change it according to the job specs. Now, let's talk about the about section. How summarized should it be, or should it tell a long story, especially if you've been working for a long time?
So, I mean, if depending on the if you have a certain job, I mean, it seems like, I mean, most people I don't think really want to read a big book.
Hmm.
um, Now there's some positions that are more analytical, maybe IT, computers, maybe finance background, things like that. Maybe you want to put more details in there, but most people don't really want to write a book. Now, what a lot of people though do too is they tell their story. It's like, okay, my first job was this, my second job was this, my third job, but realize that in a way it's about you. I mean, your about section is about you. That's what it's about. But
Hmm.
it's not just telling your story or your whole background. It's what it is put yourself in the shoes of the other person. If I'm a recruiter hiring someone, what do I want to know about you? Or if you have a business, so for example, earlier today I met with someone who's a sleep coach. And so he teaches people how to sleep better so they get well rested and they can perform at a maximum level throughout the day. And so for him, what he wants to do is write his about section so that it speaks to me if I'm not sleeping very well. So
Right.
he wants to grab my attention and let me know about him, but about him that's going to benefit me. What he's doing, how is that going to benefit me? Or if I'm a recruiter, how are you going to benefit my company? And so we get a chance to tell our story, but we want to do it so that it's directed towards our audience. And yeah, there's different ways to summarize. Sometimes you can do some bullet points in there. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't write too long of us. You don't want to really write a book. It's more of like a Reader's Digest version.
Right. And then the section where I'm 48. So I've worked for various companies in my lifetime. First of all, do I have to list every company I've worked for? Or should I list only my work history related to what I'm doing now and where I see myself going? And
Yeah.
how much of that, as you mentioned earlier, you gave a wonderful example of quantifying that when I entered this company, I raised revenue by 10%. How much of that should be there? And should I list everything from when I literally left college?
Yeah, I wouldn't list everything from when you left college. I would list most recent things and definitely things that relate in some way to that position. So, and you don't and that's one nice thing about your about section is you don't necessarily it's not like a chronological thing. You can write the most important things, maybe the three most important positions that you've had with similar companies or something that relates somehow. You don't have to make it like a resume or a chronological. You can put the most impactful things in there and the most recent things in there, and you have a chance to really to use some power words in there and really let people know how you would benefit them.
Hmm. And then, Lane, we've heard that I've actually done it as well recently. You can print your LinkedIn profile in PDF format and just send that as a resume. Would you recommend that?
I mean, that's an option. I probably wouldn't do that, for the most part. I probably would take some time and really tailor your resume for that specific company and their keywords. One other thing about the about section that I think most people miss. Imagine you're a recruiter. Again, you have 100 resumes that you're going through, and maybe you narrow that down to 30 different LinkedIn profiles, but you're still going through 30 profiles. And so if on one of those, it was a a very good photo, background, banner, title, you really grabbed your attention, and then you go down to that about section, and it really pulls you in, and you realize, wow, this person has some good qualities. Maybe we should consider hiring this person. What most people fail to do is a good call to action. In other
Mm.
words, put why not put in a good invitation at the bottom? And so you might say something like, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about your company, what you're doing, and how I can benefit your company. So to do that, to get started to do that, please send me a message on my LinkedIn or send me an email, or however you want to be contacted. I always recommend at the very bottom of your about section, invite that person to contact you, whatever your preferred method of contact is. So if you want them to send you a message, ask them to send you a message. And that way you're really helping them so that at the end you're making their job easier because you're making it very simple. If you feel like I'm a good candidate, please send me a message. Let's talk about how I can benefit your company.
Hmm. Speaking of calls to action, sometimes you'd have a suggestion where they go, have your calendar link just below your titles where you say, connect with me. Is it wise to just have your calendar link that open for anybody to tap into and book a spot with you?
It kind of depends on your goal and your purpose. Um, you know, that's totally up to you. If you prefer, instead of that, what you may do is invite them to send you a message first, and then you can kind of qualify them that way and say, okay, is this really someone that I want to spend time, setting up an appointment? But that's a good option too. It just depends on who your audience is. I definitely recommend something that you feel comfortable with, because you don't want to be put in a situation that you're not comfortable with.
Mhm.
And so I do recommend something like send me a message. You can do a Calendly if you'd like, whatever works for you. But you may want to qualify them first so that you're not spinning your wheels also.
Yeah, just filling up your Calendly. And then last part is the recommendations section. If you're a business or if you're a coach, would i- do you invite your clients to write your recommendation? Do you suggest to them that they do? Because I know you can send a recommendation request. Like, for instance, you can send me a recommendation request and say, Roberta, please write me a recommendation. Or sometimes I've had people say, here's what you write, just copy and paste it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would definitely have that in your process, and this is how I would approach it. I would, after let's say that I'm coaching somebody, and so I would have some kind of a conversation at the end and say, "Okay, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? Do you feel like I've been of a benefit to you? Has this been something that's actually done well and served you well?" And I would verify that first. Make sure that you've done a good job for them and that they feel like you have. And then I would invite them and say, you know, since you feel like I did a good job for you, I would like to invite you to let other people know because I want to help other people too. And so would you be willing to do that for me? Just have that conversation, ask them if they would, and then make it very easy for them. Let them know exactly, how they can do that. And then most people, as long as you've done well for them, most people, if you invite them to do that, they'll be happy to give you some kind of a recommendation.
Right. And then, Lane, please give us your overall summary of for LinkedIn. This is how you tell your story from the perspective of someone who's looking at your profile. This is how best to do it to increase your chances of whatever it is that you're hoping for.
Yeah, so I would put yourself in the shoes of that other person and think for most of us, why do we I'm thinking why do if I put myself in the shoes of that person, why do I want to change anything, right? Because it's so easy just to keep doing the same old, right? And
Mm,
so most people, when they want to change something, it's for one of two reasons. Either because they have some kind of a pain point, there's something that they wish would be different, that they wish would be better, or there's something that they hope to gain, something that they would enjoy, they see themselves enjoying on the other side. And so I would focus on the pain or the the good that they're seeing from whatever it is that you're offering. And so if you focus on that and put yourself in the shoes of that other person and ask yourself, okay, what pain is that person experiencing? And how do I want to make it different? So just as an example,
mm,
I work with people on profiles. So I would help people with what we've just talked about: their picture, their banner or background picture, their title, their about section, and then having a good call to action at the end. And then I help them start conversations with people. And so if I put myself in the shoes of one of my customers or one of my clients, um, their pain point is, and it could be money, it could be, you know, I'm I'm not working right now and I need some money and I need to get a job, right? Or
mhm.
I have a business and I'm doing okay, but I'm not yet at the level where I want.
Right.
And so the pain point, it could be money, it could be, I don't have enough leads, I don't have enough appointments on my Calendly, those kind of things. And so if I put myself in the shoes of that person, and that's how I write my about section, and then at the end I say, if this is you, if you are looking for a job, or if you are looking to grow your business and get more results from your LinkedIn, then let's talk. Please send me a message. And then, so if I just put myself in the shoes of that other person, what are their pain points, or what are their, I guess, pleasure points? What do they want out of it? And I write my about section that way, and then invite them at the end to contact me. That's what it's all about with the about section.
Hmm. And like you said, present yourself in the way in or in the position that you're going for. Be in that direction, not just what you
Exactly.
are now, but
Even
what it is that you're aiming for.
And going back to the example of maybe someone's a recent graduate, they know how to build websites, and they may be feeling insecure. They may be feeling that they're not enough yet because, hey, who am I to get this business and build someone's websites? But the thing is, if you are building a website, you don't have to know everything. You don't
Mm,
even have to be the best person out there, as long as you know, a couple steps about something, whatever it is that you're helping people with, as long as you are a couple steps further ahead than them, that's all it takes. You can then help them, along the way. Even if you're a new college kid building websites, that's okay, because you can still help someone that way.
Absolutely. Words of wisdom from Lane Dockstader from Utah, the LinkedIn profile specialist and expert, founder of LI Training, helping us to tell our stories through our LinkedIn profiles. Thank you so much, Lane, for being here today. It's always a blast to have a conversation with you.
Thank you, Roberta. So fun to be with you. Good to see you today.
Yeah, absolutely. But before you go, please tell us where we can find you online after this episode is over.
Okay, so my name is Lane Dockstader. It's Lane, just like a road. And then my last name is kind of tricky to spell. So it's Dockstader. It's like DOCK, like a dock by the water, David Oscar Charlie King, STA, kind of like the word stay without the Y, STA, and then DER, like David Echo Romeo. And now you know why, if I'm not careful to spell it, why I don't get very many emails. But I also have a website. It's lanedockstader.com. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to network and see how we can work together and help each other with our businesses.
Absolutely. LaneDockstader.com. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you
Don't
so
forget,
much, Roberta.
my absolute pleasure. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify, and stay tuned for more episodes to come. Thank you, Lane.
Thank you,
That's
Roberta.
the recording for today.